we have a Genesys roadmap. What's coming next? Now, I have Genesys locals tomorrow, which is pretty nice because if it was regular locals, then we would be playing old ban list with Outburst Protocol, which would have been pretty eh. So I'm excited to play some Genesys tomorrow, and we have a Genesys roadmap to look at that has some pretty interesting news regarding the future of Genesys. So let's take a quick look at this new article together. Once again, if there's one thing that's for certain about Genesys format is that the communication has been pretty damn solid from their side, because we keep getting updates through and through. So I'm excited. Let's talk about the road ahead for Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesys. Prepare for some surprises. Since the September announcement, we've been slowly rolling out and building Genesys piece by piece, starting with official tournament stores and moving up to the Genesys Invitationals held at YCS events. Here's what comes next. February 2026, Genesys Proto YCS at the 300th YCS in Richmond. The Genesys Proto YCS to be held at the 300th YCS in Richmond is an intermediate step between the Genesys Invitational and the full-fledged Genesys YCS events coming after. The Proto YCS will have no preliminary 8-player flights and will instead be one big tournament held over 2 days, just like a YCS. Pricing will still be like the Invitationals, featuring retired YCS prize cards from yesteryear as a mix of YCS tournament structure but invitational pricing. This is a hybrid transitional event. This is something that they are specifically mentioning the 300th YCS enrichment here, which is interesting because Genesys has been handled differently, at least for now, by TCG or by Konami Europe and Konami NA, because the invitational structure was also different at YCS Bologna, which was the first event that we had the Genesys Invitational at between the two. So basically, just for context, just very quickly, at the American YCSs, the Genesys Invitational was structured with 8-player flights, 8-player qualifiers, basically, where you would enter a single-player elimination bracket with 8 people. And so basically a top 8, you win, and then the first 2, so the 2 finalists, would qualify for an invitational on Sunday. So what you would have to do is win your top 8 match, win your top 4 match, you're qualified for the finals on Sunday, right? And then the finals on Sunday was one big tournament where all the qualified people played, and then they had a winner, which got a, I think it was a Shonen Jump Dark End Dragon and a giant card Pot of Greed. So the pricing was pretty good for these because they wanted to promote the format. The structure was a little bit different in Europe, which was they had instead of having a lot of small 8-player qualifiers, they had one big qualifier on Friday and one big qualifier on Saturday, and basically it was 4 rounds, and if you go 3-1, you qualify for the Sunday tournament, right? Which I thought that was better, but the only reason I thought that was better was that you could play it on the Friday, which that is a general difference between Europe and NA YCSs, is that European YCSs have public events on the Friday. So the venue is open, you can go there and you can play public events, which in my opinion is phenomenal. Honestly, the Friday is my favorite day of YCSs typically, because I mean, playing the tournament is exciting on Saturday and Sunday, but when you're playing the tournament, you are just focused on the tournament. The Friday, when you're there before the tournament has started, it's kind of like more like a convention, right? You're meeting up with friends. You can do whatever you want. You can play some Genesys. You can play Time Wizard. You can whatever it is that you want to do. You can trade. You can go to the vendors. You can just hang out with friends. The Friday is always pretty fun, and I think having public events on the Friday is amazing. Here's the thing. That what this is going to do, or I guess let's keep reading for now, because this is just a one-time thing here. This is just a transitional event, because they're going to change the thing up entirely. All right, May 2026, YCS Columbus, Genesys and advanced format. We've been talking to lots of duelists the last few months, and one thing that keeps coming up is that some folks are nervous about when a YCS comes to town. Will it be the type of event that they prefer? Some people are excited about Genesys and tell us when a YCS comes to my area, I hope it's a Genesys YCS because I would rather play that. But others say, when a YCS comes to my area, I hope it is still advanced format because I would rather play that. So as a wise person once said, why don't we do both? Moving forward, all YCS events in North America starting in May, and for Latin America starting in October, will follow a big top philosophy and have both events under one roof. And whether you play advanced format or Genesys, our motto is a YCS is a YCS, so both events will have the same pricing, including the special prize cards, currently another verse Stratios. Starting with YCS Columbus, October for Latin America, Genesys events will switch from invitational style pricing to standard YCS pricing. This is exciting news, and I think this is something that has pros and cons. So I want to analyze and talk about this a little bit, and maybe dissect all the things that we know from this. So first of all, once again, it only mentions North America and Latin America, so we have no idea how this is going to work for Europe. I assume that they're going to try to keep it similar. You know, the invitational was not held the exact same way, but the concept was the same, right? Like, we have qualifiers, we have a final on Sunday, and there's the same prizes as they were in NA. So I think it's like the overall, I assume that we're gonna move to YCS pricing in the EU as well. The question is, do you also do the same thing of have basically, because fundamentally, I don't have a problem with the idea of having a regular YCS and a Genesys YCS at the same time. The obvious negative aspect of this is that you have to choose between the two. If you are an active Yu-Gi-Oh player and you're interested in both formats, you have to choose between playing Advanced Constructed or Genesys, which, all things considered, is somewhat annoying, but you could also view it as you always have the option. You know, you can technically always pick the one that you like more at the moment. There's basically just more options. But we'll have to wait and see if that's going to be a thing for Europe as well. I personally thought that the previously existing structure was very good. Player base split, prizes devalued for both events, kind of cringe. That's something we have to wait and see how this is going to affect the price of the prize cards, because technically this means every NA YCS is going to give out another copy of another verse Stratios now for the Genesys winner. Ultimately, I think one additional copy per YCS is not really gonna matter all that much. I think that aspect is a little bit overvalued for people. Like, I think it's still gonna be worth quite a bit of money, the ultra rare another verse that you win. I guess it also matters for the stamped cards though, right? Like, yeah, that's a fair point. I guess it applies way more for those cards than just the ultra rare card, because that's just one extra copy. But for like effect veilers and card troopers or whatever it might be in future seasons, it could mean that those are going to be devalued quite a bit, because there's now twice the amount. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see how this is going to turn out. We'll have to wait and see if this also applies to Europe. I think giving Genesys this level of attention in general as a fan of Genesys format is cool. Like, in a world where Genesys is a place for some people that maybe think like Advanced Constructed is a little bit too power crept and they prefer Genesys format, I think giving them their own full-fledged YCS is great. I mean, I'm just looking at it from the perspective of, if they ever did this for Time Wizard, right? If they did this for Time Wizard, would people playing Time Wizard have liked this or not? And they definitely would have, right? They definitely would have liked this for Time Wizard. So the fact that they're doing this for Genesys is, I think, for Genesys format itself, this is a good thing. For the player base as a whole, I guess it's an interesting question of whether you prefer it this way or not. But for just the people that really like Genesys, this is probably a good thing, because you get YCSs for Genesys now, and you get the same prizes and everything, right? Time Wizard audience is so different from Advanced. Genesys is similar. That's a good point. That is a good point. Of course, the Time Wizard audience is different than the Genesys audience, right? For example, I'm using myself as an example here. I'm interested in both formats. And I think this will put me in this sort of like weird spot where I have to decide now, whenever I go to a YCS, if this is happening in Europe, I would have to decide, like, do I want to play advanced format or do I want to play Genesis? I cannot do both. It's kind of like what they do in Pokemon, right? Where if you're a big Pokemon fan and whenever they have a big Pokemon tournament, you have to decide, do I want to play the TCG or do I want to play the video game? You cannot do both. There's only one tournament each and they're happening at the same time. And you have to pick. Which is working fine for them if the player base is big enough. I mean, I guess it could work. Here's another aspect, right? If I'm looking at this from the perspective of European YCSs, all of the European YCSs are currently selling out. Basically, every single one is hitting the player cap. So offering a second YCS would give something to play for the people that don't get a ticket to the main YCS. But that once again begs the question, if we don't have, if the YCSs sell out because there's only limited space, right? So if we don't have, we have to book bigger venues if we're planning to do a full-fledged YCS for Advanced Constructed and then a full-fledged YCS for Genesis. Potentially, we're talking pretty big venues that might not be affordable in Europe for for this purpose. So a lot of this, even though for NA it seems like they've already figured out how they want to do this, I'm not quite sure if Europe is going to be able to do the exact same thing. And honestly, I think it would be weird for Europe to do the same thing because Europe has the opportunity to use the Friday, right? That's what my favorite thing about how it's been done in Europe was that you had the chance to qualify for the Sunday tournament on Friday and then play the main event. And then if you don't do well in the main event, well, you have the finals on Sunday that you can play for Genesis. I thought that was an awesome way to do it. And I think because Europe is usually open on the Friday, because Europe has the opportunity to do that, it would be kind of weird not to use this, in my opinion. What if they do something like this? Friday is day 1 of the Genesis YCS, Saturday is day 1 of Advanced, and Sunday is day 2 and top cut of both. That, in my opinion, would be perfect. That would be perfect, because then you can go there on Friday, you could play day 1 of the Genesis YCS. Depending on how you do in that one, you're going to qualify for Sunday. Basically, Sunday is day 2 then. Saturday is day 1 of the main event, you play that one, and then if you make day 2 in both, you have to pick which day 2 you attend. But just in case you only make day 2 in one of them, you just play that one on Sunday. Which also kind of like solves the space issue, right? Because then you can use the majority of your space on Friday for Genesis, the majority of your space on Saturday for Advanced Constructed, and then on Sunday, because you eliminate a lot of the players in both tournaments, you can probably fit both day 2s into the same venue, right? That, in my opinion, would be the best way to do it, or at least from what I've seen. The only thing that I'm wondering is, like, does this mean also the end of the Genesis playmat? Because that I thought was pretty cool. But okay. July 2026, win a trip to Jump Festa in Japan. At the North America, Central America, and South America WCQs, we will hold an open Genesis tournament, same structure as a YCS, and the grand prize for the top 2 will be a trip to Japan that December to attend Jump Festa, the colossal yearly manga and anime celebration. Okay. I personally think offering an alternative to the WCQ is probably not the greatest idea, because I can just talk about this from my perspective. As long as there is no Genesis World Championship, right, which I think we are quite far away from that. I might decide to play Genesis at a YCS instead of Advanced Constructed. If there's like a deck I love in Genesis and I'm not super happy about the Advanced Constructed format, I might play Genesis at 1 or 2 YCSs a year if I feel that way about the format, right? The WCQ, however, like the European Championship, I would never skip to. Like, I would never, if there's a tournament that qualifies you for Worlds and then there's a tournament that qualifies you for a trip to Japan, I would always pick the one that qualifies you for Worlds. And I would assume that a lot of players feel the same way, unless, of course, there are people that exclusively play Genesis and no longer play Advanced Constructed, which I actually don't know many people like that. I know a lot of people that are interested in Genesis format. I know people that like Genesis format, but most people I know that play Genesis also play Advanced Constructed. It's more so like Yu-Gi-Oh players as a whole that play both. Okay. August 2026, Big Top Regionals OTS Championships. After the current tournament year wraps up after the WCQs, regional qualifiers will start using the same model as YCS events, where you can come to a regional and there will be an advanced format and a Genesis regional side by side. They will have the same pricing and give invites to the matching WCQ event of your region. The same will be true for OTS championship events, which also will be both advanced and Genesis. Play in whichever you want. In general, I think this is good. I think giving people as many ways to compete in Genesis as possible is a good thing. This begs the question, it gives an invite to the matching WCQ event of your region. Does this mean we're gonna get Genesis WCQs starting next year? Will we get, you know, this has a lot of implications. You know, what is the Genesis WCQ? Because WCQ means World Championship Qualifier, right? So does that mean the Genesis World Championship is on the horizon? And if not, why is it called WCQ? Maybe it's just a very preemptive like wording. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. I don't know, but this sounds kind of exciting, you know? But it might also not mean anything. I have no idea. Yeah. Genesis events will feed into the Genesis Championships held at the WCQs, oh, okay, never mind. I should keep reading. Genesis events will feed into the Genesis Championships held at the WCQs, which will be invitation only from these events. The grand prizes for the top two at the Genesis Championship will again be a Jump Festa trip to... okay, no World Championship. No World Championship. Okay, but what this means is this year, the Genesis tournament at WCQ will be open to everybody because they don't have a qualification structure yet. But next year, you will qualify for this tournament via the regionals, right? So there is an invite that you get at regionals, but it's not for a Worlds qualifier, but it's just for like the Genesis Championships at the WCQ. Okay, sure. Which essentially means they're giving us Genesis tournaments to compete in, right? There's going to be Genesis regionals, and there's even going to be a Genesis like NAWCQ of sorts, but it doesn't qualify you for Worlds. It gives you some prizes, right? Okay. Winners packs. Starting later this year, winners at events from the OTS level to the regional level will start receiving special winners packs as prizes. Winners packs contain emblazoned foil cards like you saw in Battles of Legends Monster Mayhem and the Limited Pack World Championship 2025. Winners packs cards are all emblazoned to match the type of event at which you won them. The ones from in-store tournaments, including OTS, have the OTS logo, and the ones from regional tournaments have the regional logo. There is also a thank you pack for judges where the cards have an emblazoned judge logo. All three packs use the same card pool with just the logos being different, so you can play in an in-store event at a regional or help with judging and still work on building your emblazoned card sets no matter what you're doing. Winners packs aren't just for Genesis, by the way. Advanced format events will have them too. This is exciting stuff. This is the most exciting news, I feel like. Hidden in a Genesis article at the very bottom, they just say, oh, by the way, next season, or starting from next season, we get exclusive prize packs at locals, regionals, and for judges with emblazoned cards in them for everybody, not just Genesis, which is pretty cool. We get more prize support. The question is this going to replace OTS packs? Or because it sounds like it. At the same time, would that even be a bad thing? Because like, I'm looking at it from the perspective of the current OTS pack. I got like 30 OTS packs when I top 8'd a regional like a few weeks ago. I pulled 2 ultimate rares from it, and those were worth like $10 combined. I pulled a Ketu and a Jokul, which now after the ban list are 2 playsets, but they were like $5 or something, and now they're probably even less because, you know, the ban list. I don't think it replaces it. It's for the winner of the event only, winner. Oh yeah, winners pack. Right. Sure. The winners at the events. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if it's, I mean, of course, it goes without saying, if it's just a bonus, if it's just more prizes than before, then this is amazing. If it isn't, if it's a replacement, then we'll have to wait and see if they are better than OTS packs, right? That's all there is to it. But this is exciting stuff. I mean, this is something that's, once again, we've been asking for this mainly because other card games also have this. A lot of these other games have like these kind of like stamped cards where you win them and it says like regional champion or top 4 or top 8 or some store championship stamp or whatever. It's a very common thing in other games, and if the cards are good, then that's amazing. And once again, this is another big thing with this. What is the card selection gonna be in these packs, right? And I think if the winners pack has some pretty good and relevant cards in them, then this could be a huge boost for locals and regionals attendance. Because if you can win a locals and pull like an emblazoned Fualos, that I think would be very exciting. If you can like, I would keep going to locals, I would keep going to regionals, I would keep trying to get those packs, and then eventually have like a playset of like the Molcharmies or whatever with those stamps. I think that would be pretty amazing, personally. So we'll have to wait and see how exactly this works, but I think this is amazing news. So we've got a lot of exciting stuff in here, a lot of question marks as well in my head, a lot of mixed feelings going on. The new packs, the new winner packs are a very positive change. I think that's the definitely good news here, right? Like they are working on the price support, and that is one thing. I mean, people have been making fun of Yu-Gi-Oh's price support for such a long time, and they definitely are a little bit late to the party with all of this. But at least in the recent year, we've gotten a lot of updates to pricing in general. You know, it's been getting better and better. At YCSs, they've already started implementing things to help increase the price support for players, and now they're doing even more of that. They're also rolling out changes to OTS championships and regionals, which I think is very good. So that is good news all around. Also, supporting judges is good as well. Those are also really important. So really good change here. Regarding Genesys format, a lot of question marks here for myself. You know, is it a good thing that they are getting the same prizes as the YCS? Because I kind of thought, I mean, they deserve the same level of pricing, I think. But like, if they give out twice the amount of effect veilers, for example, that might devalue the ones you win at both tournaments, right? Instead, well, like, if they gave them different cards, then both tournaments would individually have better prizes, I think, right? Like, instead of giving out, let's say, 32 effect veilers per YCS, because 16 for advanced and 16 for Genesys, it could be 16 veilers at the advanced format and then 16 imperms at the Genesys, which, I mean, imperm would be much better than effect veiler, but you know what I mean. Then there's only 16 each, and that would be more valuable for both parties. So that could have been done a little bit better. And exclusive pricing is basically what I'm getting at. Exclusive pricing is always more attractive than the same prizes as a different tournament, right? But okay, I think all things considered, I think that's my least concern, is what kind of prizes are you going to win at these tournaments. As long as there are good prizes, I think it's kind of whatever. The biggest question here is this going to split the player base too much? And also, is Europe going to do the same thing? But from the perspective of NA, every time to go to a tournament now, every time you go to a tournament, whether it's a regional or a YCS, and even the WCQ, you are presented with an option, which could also be viewed as a good thing, because more options means you can do whatever you want to do. And I think ultimately that's how they're selling this, right? That's why they're doing this, is because they want everyone to just have a choice. They want everyone to not feel forced to play Advanced Constructed, or not feel forced to play Genesys, or be sad because the event is coming to your town, but then it is Genesys and you wanted to play Advanced, or vice versa, right? So you have an option now to play. The question is, are enough people going to choose Genesys over Advanced Constructed? because at the moment, of course, Genesis is way smaller than Advanced Constructed in terms of the numbers and the interest. I mean, not saying interest in Genesis is low, but it's definitely lower than the interest in Advanced Constructed. And even if the interest in Genesis is high, is that going to be a problem if you split your YCS, let's say, in half? Which it won't be half, but like theoretically, you know, will it be split in half? And I personally don't think that would matter too much. Like, I'm thinking about it from this perspective, right? At the moment, we have YCSs with a little bit over 2,000 players, right? We have a little bit over 2,000 players at a YCS. They are huge events. Everyone plays the main event. Would it really take away that much from the experience if instead of having one YCS with like 2,500 players, you have two separate tournaments going on in the same venue? One is 1,250, the other one is also 1,250. Would that really make your experience worse at these tournaments? I don't think so. I don't believe so. I think it doesn't really matter that much. And that's of course very hypothetical. Genesis wouldn't get 1,250. It's hypothetical, okay? If people are worried about splitting the community, then let's think it through, okay? I know Genesis wouldn't take half away from the advanced format. But the thing is, the future of Genesis is uncertain. It could grow. There could be a time, it's just started, right? There could be a time when more people play Genesis, and also there could be a world where if there is a lot of Genesis tournaments now, locals, regionals, YCSs, WCQ, it is not unrealistic that people start playing just Genesis. If this keeps happening, and if someone genuinely just prefers the gameplay of Genesis over advanced format, they could just choose to play Genesis now exclusively because there is enough tournaments for it, right? They could be traveling to a bunch of YCSs per year. They could be playing regionals in their area. They could be playing locals. The infrastructure is here for Genesis, right? The question is just going to be, will enough people play it? And I guess that remains to be seen. At the my only experience from this so far is YCS Bologna, where they offered Genesis Invitational and qualifiers, and those were very popular. Those were very popular, but that's also because they were on Friday. I think a lot of people played that because it was on Friday and because they didn't have to choose. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what kind of impact this has. I already play Genesis exclusively, so a YCS that includes Genesis would make me show up where I wouldn't have if it was just advanced. That's the thing, right? A lot of people look at this stuff from their own perspective, and they can't imagine that there's people out there with other perspectives. Like I'm not even excluding myself from this, because I'm looking at this from the perspective of I'm playing both formats. I'm gonna have to decide, which for me is gonna be difficult if they're both on the same day. And honestly, if the advanced format tournament is going to be way bigger, then I would be inclined to choose that one simply because I care about the competitive aspect. And if it's like really big, then I would rather try to win like the big YCS than the Genesis Invitational with less players, right? But I do think that Genesis and advanced format, like, people have been saying that these are very similar, and I personally do not agree with that. From my perspective, who's played both formats very actively in, advanced format ever since and Genesis format more recently, I think there are very distinct differences in power level and so on. Like, the feeling is not, it's not old school Yu-Gi-Oh, but it is by all means way lower power level than advanced constructed format. And I do believe if you think Genesis and advanced constructed format feel the same, then you don't really have a feeling for how high the power level is in advanced constructed format compared to Genesis. Like, the boards that people are doing in advanced format and the power level that cards work at in advanced format is not the same as Genesis format. All right, even if a deck sees play in Genesis format that's also viable in advanced constructed format, like Draco Tail, the power level and oppressiveness of those decks is not the same. So I can definitely see people preferring Genesis over advanced format if there is more tournaments for it. People have been so disingenuous about exactly that part of it all around. I do feel like in some places that's happening. Yeah, I do feel like in some places people aren't giving Genesis enough of a shot. Like I think they see like, oh, Draco Tail is also a good deck in Genesis format. That's the same as advanced format, and I think that's not really fair towards Genesis format. And I guess a lot of people were expecting it to feel a lot more like old school Yu-Gi-Oh, when like realistically, I think this is also maybe a little bit of a mistake that they made with how they announced it, right? Because they did say, like, I remember like one phrase specifically, they said something along the lines of like yesterday's gameplay with today's cards or something like that, which is, I think that's just a matter of they mismanaged the community's expectations, right? Like a lot of people reading the initial Genesis announcements, they were kind of expecting it to be more like Time Wizard, more like back in the day gameplay, which it is not that, right? It is not that. Genesis format is a place where generally you have less floodgates, you have less broken end boards, and you have less degenerate combos. And it also is a place where less powerful archetypes have a better chance of performing because their cards have 0 points, whereas like more powerful archetypes have more points on their engine, so you can play more powerful non-engine than some of the more powerful decks in the format. So like it's supposed to be like a more balanced environment between older / lower powered archetypes and newer stuff. But still, at its core, you are still using or you are still running into modern archetypes. So those modern archetypes are still going to feel like modern archetypes, right? Also, the lack of link monsters and pendulums reduces the power level another step and also reduces the complexity a little bit. So all that combined, what you get, in my opinion, the best way to describe Genesis is you get a lower powered and more balanced version of advanced constructed format with similar concepts of decks though, right? I think one specific aspect that is also not helping Genesis is that like it's hard for people to grasp, and I include myself in that, or it's hard to not be frustrated by it when they are still in the early stages of development and there are still some oversights in the format. Like for example, I don't blame anyone for feeling like Genesis feels the same as advanced constructed format when they're sitting across from Onomat, Ryzeal, Summon, Rongo, Miniat, right? That is, by all means, advanced constructed gameplay that happened. And it also happened to me at YCS Bologna. So I don't blame anyone who tried the format, ran into a deck like that, and then felt that way. Because I felt the exact same way when that happened, right? And it's just like, it's, on the one hand, it's understandable that they didn't release this format in like a perfect state, because it was, quite frankly, it was impossible. But at the same time, you do need to, if you are trying to sell people on this gameplay in this format, you do have to be harsher on some of these playstyles. Like, I understand maybe they wanted people to have a way to play Onomat in Genesis format, but by giving them Rongo Miniad was not the choice. You know, the fact that like every single floodgate was 100 points, but Rongo Miniad was 30. Yeah. That month where Droll was everywhere made me super doomer about it. See, that's the thing, right? It's understandable that the format is not in a perfect state when it releases, but at the same time, when it releases is when most people are going to try it. So no one is surprised that people, or I'm not surprised that people have this impression of Genesis format is when they decide to release like Onomat Ryzeal, not Ryzeal, but Onomat with Rongo at 30 points. So everyone is going to play Droll and Lockbird. So all in all, this format in that specific time frame around the time of YCS Bologna, it felt very much like advanced format. So I think a lot of people that started playing Genesis in that time period got that impression that it was very similar to advanced format. In reality, it's not, because if you look past Onomat, if you looked past Onomat and maybe Lunalight, all of the decks in Genesis format are a lot fairer. But in that specific time frame, it just failed to showcase that. like I went to locals and I played against no onomats. Like I went to Genesys locals and it was an amazing time because people played their pet decks. You know, people played. What did I play against? I played against Pearly. I played against what was it? I forgot. It's been like 2 months or something when I went to my first Genesys locals. Oh yeah. Anyways, to summarize this entire thing on how I'm feeling about this, I still am hyped for Genesys format. I still think it's very fun and I think it's going the right direction. I like the concept of it a lot because even though it fails to execute it sometimes, you know, it still is a place where more fair Yu-Gi-Oh is being played, where end boards are more breakable, and where there is in general less floodgating, less comboing, less turn skips, less non-games. So a lot of these things, in my opinion, are very fun. I've been enjoying it a lot. Getting more opportunities to play it is going to be exciting. I'm not sure how I feel about the fact that they are doing Genesys and Advanced format at the same time always, because I'm not sure how I feel about having to choose. But at the same time, if maybe one of the formats sucks at any given time, then you can just be like, whatever, I'll play the other one, which can be an advantage as well. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. And the winners packs are a huge W.